for today. Thrilled to have you guys back. If you are returning from last week, thrilled to have you. So today's topic is executive leadership programs, how to get and keep them engaged. So we get this all the time from folks. I know my customers reach out. I've got folks in the community that bring it up all the time. Kristi, how do we get executives engaged? How do we keep them engaged? And so this is something that we want to talk about because we know how key it is to the success of the partnership, right? Keeping executives engaged in the partnership. So in today, we're going to cover a ton of things. Some of these are going to be, how do we talk about it through the life cycle of the customer journey? And then I'm going to cover some more unique or creative programs that you can all do and probably run in your own businesses. And that's the idea here. We try to keep the content in our boot camps practical and tactical. So give you things that you can kind of take with you today and start to go execute. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So if you are like us at ClientSuccess or any company I've ever worked at, getting and keeping executive stakeholders engaged in the partnership, it's difficult, right? So often you've got great momentum in the sales process, right? They're engaged. You've got them signing contracts, like they're on all of these calls. All of a sudden, contract is signed and we like get ghosted from day one. And so that's a challenge for a lot of folks. And we're going to talk about ways that we can creatively keep them engaged. And so what I'm walking you through is a little bit of how can we think about this through the customer journey, as well as how can we come up with creative ways that we can create an environment and a partnership that really is providing value for them. Because we know at the end of the day, at certain levels, it's not about the product, right? It's about the outcomes. And so we've got to heavily anchor on that to make sure folks are getting as much value as possible. So this is what I see. And please, I'm sure again, if you feel attacked, it just means we need to modify a little bit here. But I noticed that a lot of folks are just running their programs the same way. And unfortunately, it's just driving that outcome of we don't get the executives engaged. We are not capturing their attention. They don't see this partnership as a priority. It's not bringing value. If they're not investing the time, it's because they don't think it's worth their time. And I think that's an important thing for us to just all hear. I give my time as an executive to the things that are important to me, the things that I know that will be valuable to me, valuable to my team, valuable to my business. If it's not proving that it's going to be valuable, I don't attend. I got to be honest with you guys. I don't do QBRs because I don't attend QBRs. And I would never ask somebody to do something that I don't do myself. And so I won't dive into that. You guys have all, for those of you who have heard me talk about this, we have a different program. We don't do EBRs and QBRs, and I'll tell you guys why. You can go listen to other boot camps on there. Happy to point you in that direction of why and what we do in place of that. But that's our reality, right? As an executive, I have so little time. And outside of giving my free time to my employees, I've got to give it to my customers. And so I've got to be really thoughtful about where additional time goes, right? I'm running a business. So here's what I see today. And these are the things that we've got to start to either stop doing or just modify a bit. First, we're getting tactical too soon. Okay. I have seen so many companies jump from that first, after the contract is signed, they are so quick to jump right into onboarding, where we're talking about product and integrations and we're getting so technical and tactical. If I'm an executive, I'm like, okay, who on my team is running with this? It's not me. Right. And that's a problem. We miss an entire opportunity to engage the executive and have a very thoughtful conversation with them before we even get started. We miss that. And so if you're in an organization right now where your first conversation is like in the weeds, you've got to bring that up because you're missing an opportunity to keep that executive engaged a little bit longer. The next thing I see, minimal focus on results. Again, going back to why I do not do EBRs and QBRs, and it's not because they're not valuable, but it's because as an industry, we've ruined them. We have made these conversations about us and our companies and our products, and we have not made it about the customers. So when there is a minimal focus on results, again, as an executive, I don't care about your product. I don't care about your roadmap. I don't care about, what feature requests I've entered or what bugs we've been navigating. I want to know is, have we achieved any of the goals that I have set out for? Are we seeing a positive impact to my business? That's literally all I care about. But I'll tell you something. I talk to CSMs all the time, and not many are doing a great job of actually capturing what the customer's goals are. And I mean it through a SMART goal, right? Like really documenting that, like understanding the goal and ways to measure it. Because at the end of the day, if we don't know what our customers are trying to achieve and how we're measuring it, how am I supposed to go back to the executive and say, oh, yes, look at the impact we've driven for your business? Now, listen, I get that it's hard, and a lot of customers will come into the partnership and not have the ability to articulate very clearly what their goals are. You've got to help them. If you are a customer success professional, if you are a leader, you've got to bring a framework that helps your customers understand how to define those goals. But if you're in a place right now where you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a CSM, my job is to help our customers achieve their goals, but you don't even know what those goals are, we are falling short of doing our job. Therefore, we're not going to be able to go back to the executive and say, yes, look at all the great work that we've done. Last is lack of thought leadership. I think we believe that our products are the real value to our customers in that partnership. And we're making a huge misstep here, because the reality is customers are partnering with us not just for the solution, but for the thought leadership as well. Now, I'm going to have to use these boot camps as an example. And we do the same thing with our masterclass. I know Kristi Roberts, who's one of our senior CSMs at ClientSuccess, she's on the webinar now, and I know that she's in the chat. We run different programs to provide thought leadership to our customers at different levels. So these boot camps are a way that we do that. We help our customers, product agnostic, understand what's happening in the industry. How should they be thinking about customer success? So we know that they're buying so much more than our solution. We are trying to help coach and guide them. We want them to understand what the future of this business looks like. How should they be thinking about it in their own organizations? And that has intrinsic value, especially to leaders. So if you are just solely focusing on educating on product usage and adoption and features and functionality, you're missing a huge opportunity there to engage your customers more thoughtfully around thought leadership. Now, I will tell you what I hear from folks when they push back on me. Kristi, I'm not an expert in security. I am not an expert in education, right? If you've got CSMs or you've got leaders that are not subject matter experts, it may seem difficult to provide that level of thought leadership, but guess what? We can think about it through other folks in our organization. For example, I worked for a company when we were in the SaaS apps management space. I have to say that very slowly so I don't mess it up. And we were working with CTOs, CIOs, CISOs. Guess who we would bring to lead some of our thought leadership? Our CIOs, our CTOs, our CISOs. We had experts in the organization, regardless if they were part of the CS team, they were experts. So I am confident that you have some level of expertise in your organization. And to be very honest with you, it's not difficult to go out there and educate yourselves and bring those learnings to bear in support of your customers. So let's stop making excuses here. We know that we can bring so much more value. If you are not doing these things, or you're doing some of them, we've got to rethink how we approach supporting our customers to engage executives. So if you're getting too tactical too soon, we're going to talk about ways that you can go around that. Minimal focus on results. Again, we led a session on how to define goals. We'll probably revisit something more creative in the future. And then lack of thought leadership. You guys have to provide value beyond your products. So when I say start early, the first step is that partnership kickoff. So I got to tell you, we did lead a boot camp on the partnership kickoff framework. Again, we can bring that up. But what we do here at ClientSuccess is the first conversation we have with all of our customers does not go into onboarding. It actually lets us set the tone for the partnership. We align on goals. We do roles and responsibilities. We set expectations both for our customers and our customers of us. And so we use this as an opportunity to get the executive stakeholders buy-in around how we're going to engage. What does value look like for them? What is their role in the partnership going to be? And we make sure that we've got a very clear understanding of how they want to engage with us, but how to keep them engaged. And we do it by roles, right? So we know probably how to keep your admins engaged or how to keep end users engaged. Those might be heavily product focused. But when it comes to the executive, what value can we bring to you, Mr. or Mrs. Executive, in these conversations? How can we ensure that you're being updated effectively about how the partnership is going? We ask them, we get their take, we get their feedback. And we do that so we can create the appropriate experiences for them. And we don't dictate what those are. I don't tell my customers, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. I want their feedback. I may say, this is how we recommend, or this is how other customers like you are engaging with us. We always give recommendations. We always have a framework that we can build off of. But at the end of the day, our customers are telling us what they want, what they expect, and how they want to engage. And so we use this partnership kickoff to establish that day one. It's the first conversation we have. And I will tell you, we do not advance that conversation if an executive stakeholder is not present. I will happily reschedule. I will happily reschedule again. We need their buy-in. We need them to articulate to us what good looks like, what great looks like. how we can partner together. So if you are not having a conversation like that up front, you're missing a big opportunity when we think about the executives. So let's just, before we get into programs today, I want to just hit on a few easy ways. These are simple ways to engage throughout the journey, and I'll talk a little bit about each. So first is that partnership kickoff. Like I said, this is the first discussion we have with all of our customers. So before we get started, we do a lot of our own research. So as CSMs, we go and do our due diligence, and that requires us connecting with the sales team, getting all the information that they captured during the sales process. We're also doing our own research. We're researching the customer. We're researching their company, all of the contacts in there. We're looking at G2 to understand what do their customers say about them, what's working, what's not working. We're on Crunchbase. We are learning about their business. So we show up prepared with the right dialogue and the right conversation so that we are providing value and our customer views us as a partner, right? We are coming to that discussion prepared and ready to engage. So that partnership kickoff allows us a really great framework to establish a relationship with the executive. Now, I will tell you, obviously, to scale, when you think about that, it is difficult for me as an executive to be present on all of those meetings. And so my team does very much introduce who I am, make sure that they have my contact information. And if I can attend, I do. When it's appropriate, I make sure that I'm there. Other times I may reach out just to welcome them, send an introductory email, make sure that they've got my contact information. There are ways to, again, think about how to scale that. So partnership kickoff is the first step. If you're not taking advantage of that as your first point of engagement with your executive, missed opportunity. The second thing that we do here at ClientSuccess, which has been really, really effective, is I do an onboarding check-in. Now, I don't manually send these emails out, although I wish I could, but this is the beauty of automation. And so if you're not using technology to help you scale, you need to think about that. What I do is I create an automation rule. This automation sends an email out to the executive stakeholders in all of our customers 45 days into onboarding. And it allows me to have and set up a conversation with them. So while the email might be automated, the intent and the engagement that follows that is one-on-one. So it sends out my Calendly, please book a meeting with me. Here's the agenda of what I want to check in on and make sure that we are, again, doing what we need to help make sure that you're set up to succeed. And I will tell you, I've got a 95% response rate to that email. It's an automated email. 95% of the customers that receive that email book a meeting with me. The other 5%, they may not book a meeting, but they do respond. I've never had a customer who did not respond to that automation. And the reason why is because it is personalized. It's from me with the intentions of that outreach, hoping to schedule a conversation. And what that meeting does is now I have the ability as an executive to an executive to build and foster a relationship that I did not have before. So now, again, when we think about multi-threaded relationships, hopefully my CSMs have had a chance to meet and engage with the executive in that partnership kickoff. I now have an opportunity to have that dialogue with them one-on-one. We get to build a relationship, facilitate introductions. I get to learn a little bit more about their business, who they are, what they expect. If we're falling short, it gives me an opportunity to proactively mitigate some of that. I can get ahead of any issues before they escalate. I can also hear, things that we're doing really well. I can celebrate my CSMs. I can ensure that we're continuing to drive that value for them. But this automation, it drives a ton of engagement. And so now I'm 45 days into the partnership. It gives me another opportunity to have a dialogue with that executive. Now, I do have executive business reviews on here. Why? Because I know so many of you do them. So this is more as a gift to you to say, if you're doing them, that should be an opportunity for you to engage with the executive. Now, as I mentioned, I do not do executive business reviews. I'm very open about that. We have something that we call a core meeting, which is a customer objectives review meeting. And the intention of that is to say, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, here's your goal. Here's how we're progressing to that. Has anything changed? How do you feel about the results? What could we be doing differently? Let's continue. Here's our plan on next steps. We're not here to talk about the roadmap. I don't care about your feature requests, your bugs, your this and that. It is not that type of conversation. It is simply an opportunity for us to align on your objectives, the ones that you set out for with this partnership. That's simply it. And I will tell you, for executives who have said, I'm not interested in attending those kind of meetings, great. As an alternative, and I love to give my executives options, would you prefer that we just build a deck and send it to you? Would you prefer an email summary? Would you like we can do an email summary. We could do a one-pager. So there's no E at the end of core. Jennifer, great call out there. It's just core, COR. So customer objectives review. And so We use that framework to keep our customers engaged and to make sure that, again, we're just focusing on those outcomes, because that dialogue is something our executives are interested in. So whether it's the meeting, it's a one-pager, it's a deck, it could be an update. We've done them in Loom. I've had some customers who are like, can you just send me something asynchronously? I will watch it in my free time. Just give me an update. Figure out what your customers want and how they want it and give it to them that way. The challenge that I see with so many organizations is that we design a journey that suits our needs internally. And very rarely are we designing things outside in so that we are putting the customer at the forefront of that. And now all you have to do to make this more customer centric is to give options, right? Introduce some flexibility. So if you're doing an EBR and your EBR framework is something like roadmap, product, feature requests, usage, adoption, nobody cares. The executive doesn't care that their team is using the product. What they care about is the usage of that product driving a specific outcome? So you've got to make sure that you're very thoughtful in the information that you're putting into it. So if you're doing an EBR and it feels very much about you as a company, rethink some of those slides. You could probably cut down that hour-long meeting into 15 minutes. Lastly, advocacy engagement. As soon as we see customers who are doing great work in the partnership, and great work doesn't mean, listen, I've got customers, plenty of customers who might not have positive sentiment. Maybe they're frustrated, something's going wrong, but they're still getting use and value out of our solution. I still want to approach them with an opportunity to be an advocate in the partnership, right? And we have those dialogues. So advocacy for us allows us to understand, are there ways for us to engage our executives to give them opportunities sometimes to build their own brand? So for example, for me personally, again, I'm working at ClientSuccess, so I get to use our organization here to build my brand. But for a lot of our customers, as I think about them at ClientSuccess, they love the opportunity to lead a webinar, right? Or they want to do an article, or they want to speak at an event. Things like that helps build their brand. Now they're serving as advocates, but now we're giving those executives something tangible for them, something that is actually helping them personally. So there's a real value add to them. And actually, this is very mutually beneficial, right? Because we're building our relationship, we're giving them something, they're helping us with our brand initiatives. So when I think about advocacy, I try to figure out what can we do that is mutually beneficial? How can we help that individual achieve their personal goals, as well as helping us achieve our internal goals? And so if you understand what those drivers are for your executives, it helps you become very creative in thinking about, how do we create those opportunities to help them achieve that? I'll give you a quick story here. I used to work with the technology that I loved. I talked about it all the time. And they knew that one of my personal goals was to help build my brand and my personal thought leadership. And so what they did is they gave me a platform to do that. They knew that I would be an advocate for them, and it was advantageous for both of us, right? I will continue talking about their product. They're going to give me opportunities for me to build my brand and my presence. And so as an executive, I was so invested in that partnership. And your customers, they want the same thing from you. So you can find creative ways to do that. I apologize if you hear my dog barking in the background. And then lastly, here is a pre-renewal discussion. So again, going back to that idea of automation, one of the other things that we do to just get and keep executives engaged, 5-6 months before the renewal starts, we start our renewal process at 120 days, which is effectively 4 months to the renewal. So that 120 allows us enough time to have the appropriate conversations, mitigate any risk, and really make sure that we're going into the renewal as best prepared as possible. 5-6 months before that, an automation goes out from me to the executive again. Now I'm just aligning on the partnership. Now, again, depending on when you do these business reviews, or in our case, our core meetings, I'm not running them quarterly. I'm running them when it's appropriate. So for us, I don't have to worry about this outreach coinciding with a QBR, because this pre-renewal discussion is a one-on-one dialogue that I might be having with those executives. Now, in some cases, it may not be me. It might be another executive in our business. It might be the CSM. But the idea here is that it is with the executive on our customer's side. So whoever the most senior resources that we are partnered with there, that goes to them. And it's to see, how are things going? Again, it's another opportunity for us to identify some opportunity, some value. We usually do some research before we go into those discussions to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we actually see here's some things that we're identifying in how you guys are using the technology today. Here's some recommendations that we have. We try to make it light. If they want to go deeper into it, we've got tons of programs around that. We do something called a platform success audit, or what we refer to as a PSA. We did a boot camp on that also, but that framework allows us to go deep in helping our customers understand how they're deployed our software against best practices and where they can optimize. So we love to do those for customers, and we use these conversations to actually see, is that something our customers would view as valuable? So having that dialogue also allows me to get ahead of risk. It allows me to build and foster a relationship with the executive and to deepen that relationship. And where there is opportunity, where things are going really well, we've also used that to start to do growth conversations around expansion or upsell, to also think about advocacy initiatives, early renewals. So that pre-renewal discussion that I'm having with customers, again, mutually beneficial. It's advantageous for us to have that because our customers are getting value and we are as well. So again, these aren't the programs. I'm going to walk you through some more creative ways, but wanted to just give you an example of, you probably have a customer journey today, and without doing anything else, you can do these few things and start to really drive deeper engagement with your executives. So without adding any fancy programs, just take what you're doing today and enhance it. Change the dialogue, change the outreach, change the cadence. Just make some modifications and you can start to see that your executives will view you differently, right? The value that they're getting from those conversations. So here are a couple of programs that we've put together, some that we're running here, some that I've run at other organizations that have been wildly successful. So let's start with our leadership bootcamp. I am seeing the chat here, guys. If you guys want to enter any of those questions into the Q&A for me to get to at the end, I promise I will try to answer as many of those as possible. So first one is leadership workshops. This is a newer initiative that we actually kicked off at ClientSuccess in Q1. This is a quarterly program. I'm going to dive into all the details around those workshops. The next is a customer advisory board. We'll talk about the different types of advisory boards because there are a few different ones, and I want to just make sure that we are very clear on what I'm talking about through this specific one of a customer advisory board. Then there is executive events. I'll give you some examples of that. And last is the executive pairing groups. And so this is more of kind of like a one-to-one engagement with your customers. So let's start with leadership workshops. So what the leadership workshop is we've decided to do these quarterly. We have proposed monthly. We're trying to figure out what we can handle here with our current resourcing and bandwidth. But we did kick it off, and it's intended to be quarterly. So we did Q1, we did a quarterly workshop. And so what these are, it's designed to bring together your leaders to tackle specific industry challenges. Again, I want to emphasize that these workshops are platform agnostic. This is not about how do my customers get more value from ClientSuccess. That's not what this is. In fact, I don't even believe that we talked about ClientSuccess at all in our leadership workshop. What we did is we assigned a topic of conversation to the workshop, a theme. And so in our first theme, we did it around digitizing customer success, scaling customer success, right? How do we think about scale, that more one-to-many approach? And so that was the topic that we assigned to our first one. We limited the number of attendees. In order for this to be a really kind of an effective workshop, you can't have a huge group. We limited this to about 25 attendees, and we broke them out into small groups because the working session is where the real value is. And so thinking about what is an appropriate number of attendees that you can have for breakouts to really facilitate ideation and brainstorming. And the last is, how do you facilitate conversations after the workshop is over? That was something big. We did a survey. We got a lot of great feedback. Everyone gave us a 5 out of 5 in terms of the value that they got from the workshop, which was great. Piece of feedback is that they all want to continue that dialogue. So we are using our community platform, which we use Higher Logic, to facilitate that. But you can do a Slack group. You can have a LinkedIn group. You can figure out what works best for your business, given the resources and tools that you have access to. So I'm going to give you some context. So first thing we did is we gauged the interest from our customers in advance. I definitely recommend doing a pulse check with your customers before you start to put a ton of resources and time into something that will just fail or fall short of meeting your expectations. Maybe fail is not the right word. So what we did is I actually asked my customers, Late last year, I actually did interviews with about 40 customers, and I asked them, I said, hey, here are some programs that I'm thinking about for 2024. And I want to see if these are the types of things that you would like to see from us at Client Success and that you would be willing to attend and that you believe would bring intrinsic value back to you personally as an executive. And when I presented the idea of these leadership workshops, all of our customers were super excited. In fact, when we launched our Q1 workshop, we hit the attendance capacity. We originally did it at 50 people. We hit that attendance capacity in the first 48 hours. We had a wait list. And so folks were excited about the idea of coming together and brainstorming with their peers. And so we did make sure that it was leaders only. We were very specific in saying, not only who we targeted for invitations, but then also making sure that we were very clear that in order to attend, you had to be a leader. Because in order for this to be effective, we wanted everyone to be able to contribute the same value. Now, I know leader titles are different across organizations, so there was no requirements around title, just the scope of your role. The second thing, we had to select topics that were timely and relevant. So I'm sure everyone could relate to the fact that everyone is trying to figure out this whole idea of scale, right? How do we introduce a more one-to-many approach? How do we touch multiple customers? We've got less resources. How do we get more creative? How do we continue to bring value at scale? So we've tried to find a topic that was timely and relevant. The next one was those limited attendees. As I mentioned, for hours, we originally started with targeting 50 people. Based on some feedback that we had got, we said, okay, great. You know what? We're going to limit this because we wanted the groups to be smaller than groups of 10. And we felt like we could manage 5 groups as breakouts with all the resources we were bringing to bear at Client Success. So we did groups of 5 and we had these small breakout groups. And so that was perfect for ideation because we gave everyone about an hour and 15 minutes in the breakouts to go and ideate. And we gave them prompts, right? So we had a grid matrix that said, basically answer these 4 questions together. And it allowed them to identify what the challenges are, come up with solutions for this, ways to measure it, how are they going to execute it and roll it out. And so they all came together and filled out this grid. Now, the last thing that we did here is we left time for group presentations and Q&A. So we made sure that at the end, when everyone was done with their workshopping and their solutioning of these ideas, each group then, as we came back together, presented their ideas and we had a dialogue and we left time for Q&A. And everyone got a lot of value out of that because some groups tackled certain topics and ideas and others had other unique ideas. And so then we took all of the forms and things that people created and filled out. We actually compiled that into one master doc to share. Now, like I said, the big thing here was being able to give our attendees a place to continue the conversation. In our case, we did create a community group for them to continue that dialogue and keep those relationships going. But in some cases, if you don't have a community platform, like I said, if you've got Slack could be great. Even if your company doesn't allow for Slack and maybe you're using Teams, you can figure out another alternative that might make sense. There's plenty of free options too. Maybe at the end of the day, you just create an email alias and just allow people to email back and forth. So again, just get creative, right? There's tons of easy and inexpensive ways to do this. And so I would love that, Marian, thank you so much for giving your feedback on the workshop since you attended. But it was really great to just, again, facilitate that conversation. Now, our survey, we learned a ton. We're going to do a couple of things. We're going to modify some things, but overall, the feedback was wonderful. Folks really got a lot of value out of it. And I think we made some new friends. All right, the next one here is the customer advisory board. Now, I want to just be very clear. There are a few different types of advisory boards. There's not a one size fits all. You might have a product advisory board. Your product advisory board are advisory boards that are exclusively focused on the innovation and development of your product. Okay, so they become very product centric. Your customer advisory board is not necessarily solely focused on product. There could be bits and pieces of that tied to that conversation. But the idea here is you're really thinking beyond that. You're thinking about the industry, the vision, the future of the space that you're in. Obviously, how does your product and this partnership support that? But it is really more customer centric around your industry. Now, another one that I've seen is just kind of a general advisory board. In those cases, they don't even need to be customers. They could just be professionals and experts in the industry. Again, that is really, I really like those advisory boards. They're not easy to coordinate. They're definitely not inexpensive either. Usually those folks want equity or they want to be paid to be part of that, but they're really helping drive your business forward. So just want to make sure that I'm being very clear. In this case, I'm talking about a customer advisory board. Now, the reason why I'm not talking about a product advisory board is because, as I stated earlier, these executives, in a lot of cases, your executives might not be your primary users of your solution. In fact, many cases, they might not be using it at all, right? They bought a product that they want their teams to use, but as an executive, they're not in your solution every day. So if you have a product advisory board, you just got to be very thoughtful. Is this person actually somebody who is using your product? And if so, great, then that's the type of advisory board that they'd be a good fit for. So when you think about this as a group of advisors. They come together quarterly or biannually. It's usually to discuss, as I mentioned, the state or future of the industry that you're in. Usually these have, private groups or channels to facilitate ongoing conversations. I've seen a lot of this just be done by email. So again, we don't need to overcomplicate with more tech. Although I will say, I do believe that there are specific platforms out there that are just designed to facilitate advisory boards. And so if your budgets so permit, you can actually go out and buy customer advisory software. But like I said, I've seen it be very effective via email, Slack, different community groups. So you don't need to get super crazy in that investment. And the real idea here is that you're engaging executives. Sometimes you're engaging your executives with investors, with prospects, and you're really kind of bringing them into the fold of your business. It helps to facilitate those cross-functional relationships throughout your organization. Usually in these advisory boards, you're going to see leaders across your organization. So your CEO is probably going to be involved, almost like a definitely yes. You might see, in this case, your chief customer officer or somebody who's overseeing the customer experience. Your chief revenue officer is likely to be there, your chief marketing officer. So you're bringing in cross-functional executives in support of this. And when I think about, again, creating really deep-rooted relationships with your customers, especially at that executive level, they shouldn't be single-threaded with anyone in your business either. I don't want any of my customers who are executives to only have access to me. I want them to be speaking to Dave Blake, our CEO. I want them engaged with our head of marketing, our head of sales. I want our entire company, especially our head of product, I want our entire company to feel like they've got access to our customers, and that helps to prevent that single point of failure. So let's talk about a few ways that you can think about approaching this. First piece of advice I'm going to give you here, select executives who will bring the most value, not just those that are tied to the biggest ARR. I see this all the time. Companies will say, oh, but this is our largest customer. They're spending the most. Just because they spend the most does not mean that they will bring the most value to this type of conversation. There is something for everyone. This might not be that for them. So just be very thoughtful in bringing the right people to the discussion. Limit this. This should not be hundreds of people should not be part of this advisory board. I would say limit should be 10. And then you should also really figure out what is the appropriate term length. I have seen folks serve on a customer advisory board for up to a year, but usually what you'll see is a rotation every year. And that is strategic also, right? You want different points of views. You want different people engaged. You want folks building relationships with different organizations. So definitely make sure that you're diversifying what that looks like in terms of who and how long. Establish the cadence of engagement here. So this is important when you start to get into that planning. Is this going to be something that you're going to do quarterly? Are you going to do it, biannually? I've seen. So just be very thoughtful in how you're able to get them engaged. You're also asking for a lot of time. These advisory board meetings, these aren't like 50-minute meetings. They're not, 30-minute meetings. These are usually pretty lengthy. The ones that I've orchestrated are at least 2-hour sessions. And so to ask an executive for 2 hours, even if it's every quarter, that's a lot of time throughout the course of the year. That's 8 hours of their time. That's not insignificant. So just be very thoughtful about also what you're demanding of them. And again, there has to be that mutual benefit. Lastly, if you can, arrange for in-person meeting if possible. I will tell you the best advisory boards that we've had are ones where we were able to get together in person. There is something about being with people in person that changes the entire dynamic of a relationship. And you all know that if you're in a customer-facing role, you probably understand the value of being in person. So just think about that if that is something that you can do. Lastly, align their engagement with things that are the most relevant to them. everyone's got an area of expertise, right? I always say like let's lean into people's superpower, making sure that whoever you've got involved in the advisory board, that you understand what their strengths and contributions can be, and then make sure that you're amplifying that in this setting. So these advisory boards, really fantastic for building and strengthening that executive relationship. Next is executive events. Now, again, I know budgets are tight, so this is probably something that has fizzled a little bit, but I have had tremendous success with hosting executive events. Now, over my years in customer-facing roles, we have done really, really fantastic and creative things. But if you think about this, you can make them regional. So I don't know about any of you, but a lot of our customers are almost fully remote at this point. And so to get access to executives, we can't go to someone's office any longer. So what we've done is we've started to expand into regional events. And so what we do is we hit up some major cities where we know we have customers present, and we organize them regionally. So we're bringing folks together in a specific region. Let's say it's Austin or New York or Chicago or San Francisco. We bring them together and we try to find executives there. Sometimes this is customers and sometimes this is prospects. It can be a mix of both, but you're really making it an opportunity to build relationships and to start doing some future planning. These are exclusive and invite only. This is not like, oh yeah, thanks for the invite, I can't go, but Mary on my team can go. This is specific to the person you're inviting. If they can't make it, that's okay, but it is not intended for them to pass that invitation down. We want to be building and fostering relationships at the most senior level. And these types of events are usually not inexpensive. When we think about this, these are high-end events. Think about excursions or Michelin restaurants, sporting events, things like that. We want to create experiences. When you're asking for this level of engagement from senior executives, especially if you're working with some large organizations, as I have in the past, to command their time and attention, it has to be something meaningful. I will say probably memorable as well. So like I said, things that we've done, we've targeted cities that have the largest customer penetration to bring folks together. We love it to be a customer event. Sometimes we'll sprinkle some prospects in there as well, just so prospects can get a sense of who our customers are, how we engage, the types of conversations, the relationships. It kind of gives them an opportunity to see what it could be like to be a partner. Partner with marketing on these. These events, again, should be really, really well executed. Marketing usually is the best at doing that type of stuff. So if you've got a field marketing team, especially, lean into it, because they should be helping with the messaging, the themes of these, coordinating the place, making sure that everything's on brand and you're creating a branded experience. I've seen these led by marketing and I've seen them led by CS. I will just say that the ones led by marketing are usually better. Reserve spots for the most senior executives in the partnership. So be very intentional, like I said, not only who you're targeting, but who you're inviting. I think these types of events, given the investment, usually ended up being for the higher end of our customer portfolio. We weren't inviting like our SMB customers to attend these, sadly. It's a mutual investment, right? So if our customers are making investments in us, we're making investments in them. This was this was part of that, kind of luxurious experience we were creating based on that mutual commitment. Build in discussions. Okay, so this is something that I think some people love, some people don't love, but you should make it conversational, not only so that folks are building relationships with one another and your team, but really like be intentional about the broader discussions that you're having about the industry. You want to be able to get value from this as well. And so it's really critical that you think about that. Lastly, your follow-ups need to be as strong as the events themselves. You have now got all this momentum with some of the most important people in your customer portfolio. The last thing you want to have happen is that this falls flat, right? That you had the event and it was the highest of high, and then it just kind of falls. You should be using this as an entry point into an ongoing dialogue. You're facilitating relationships. Like this should be something that you're building momentum off of. And so I will tell you, if you are not being very thoughtful about what does the follow-up and the engagement look like post-event, you're missing a huge opportunity. But these have tremendous impact if you have the budget and can make this type of investment. Lastly is executive pairing. So one of the other pieces of feedback I've gotten from a lot of executives is that I'm building out my board of directors or my board of advisors. If you're a leader, you likely have a few people that maybe you go to for advice, for guidance, for industry knowledge, right? You're testing something out and you just need somebody, it's that sanity check. Well, a lot of our executives don't necessarily have that, right? It's not something that they've been in pursuit of independent of our partnership. And so if we can find 2 or 3 or 4 like-minded executives and pair them together and kind of create this buddy system where we are facilitating dialogue and relationships, you've now helped create their executive board. There is real value in that. You have now given them access to something they didn't have before that will actually help further their success personally and professionally. And if you can create easy ways for them to communicate and keep in touch, and you're at the center of that, your brand is what is keeping them together. Now, obviously, of course, we know that people will end up taking things to text message or to LinkedIn, and that's all fine and dandy. But we know that we were the ones to help facilitate and build that. And we'll talk about some ways that we've kept that ongoing. So first, collect information from your customers early in the partnership. One of the things that we have done is we've asked folks coming in and saying, hey, are you interested in a pairing or partnering program? And we explain what this is, and we give people and say, like, awesome, that's something you want to do. As we get closer where this becomes an opportunity, we try to make sure that we don't do it with customers who are in onboarding. We want them to focus on onboarding, then get out of that. And then we can start to have them be part of this partnering program. Ask executives to opt in. You might have existing customers who you can't ask day one because they've already been customers of yours. Send out a form, send out a survey, ask them to opt into these types of programs. You just want to make sure that you're identifying who, and so that way you can make those pairs. Facilitate introductions. You're going to have to be the kind of center, the nucleus of these relationships, at least initially. What we've done is facilitate small group meetings, Zoom or in person, where we had somebody on our team facilitate those small groups. We've actually had kind of a list of questions just to help facilitate the getting to know you, understanding who their businesses are, talk about the customers that they solve, the problems that they're facing, what their priorities are. So they really get to know what each of them are focused on and like where they are professionally. Now, to make sure that we get the pairing correctly, we do ask a whole bunch of questions, right? We need to learn more about them as individuals, right? Are you a first-time leader? Do you report to the CEO, or do you report to a different member of the executive leadership team? So just even simple things like that, it helps to bring like-minded professionals together. So just be very intentional about how you're pairing, not just like, oh, you're in ed tech and you're in ed tech. Great. You two must be able to help each other. That's not the case. So just be more thoughtful about the types of questions so you're pairing the right people. Provide monthly prompts to facilitate productive conversation. I will tell you, sometimes work gets in the way. Can you imagine? Can you imagine your job getting in the way of you building relationships? And so we want to make sure that we are facilitating these discussions and that they were ongoing. So we would often have these email groups or I've done them in community, I've done them via email. Email was always the easiest because people were already in their inboxes. And we'd say, hey guys, and then we'd prompt with a question, and then they'd all start to just reply on that thread. And it was so interesting to just watch that dialogue and people responding to other people's thoughtfulness. It was just really cool to see. And then lastly, find a way to track and measure the impact of that coordination. What is the value that they're getting? And maybe have kind of some survey that you can actually do a pulse check and say, is this something you're getting value from? Are you guys helping each other? Are the conversations useful? Are they good use of your time? Just to make sure that it's the right pairing. I also recommend maybe changing it up. Maybe not every 6 months, maybe it is every 6 months, maybe it's every 12 months, but you want to give people the opportunity to engage with others. So obviously they can remain friends, they're colleagues, they can remain in contact, but just as far as the pairing program in your organization, you might want to just think about how often you're switching that up. So these are a couple different unique programs that you can deploy in your organization that executives are likely to participate in and also get a lot of value from. So a few things that I'll leave you with before we hop over to Q&A. One, establish relationships with executives early in the partnership. If you are not, it's a huge missed opportunity, guys. Rethink how you're facilitating those early dialogues and start to build those relationships as soon as possible. Don't rely solely on these programs and skip the opportunities to engage organically throughout the partnership. We will use at ClientSuccess, we have something in our product called our Pulse, which is a part of our product. And our team updates the Pulse every time they engage with the customer. And those Pulse updates go into Slack. And so we all see them all the time. If there's something interesting in an update that our customer success manager added, maybe they're going through M&A or someone just got promoted or someone just had a baby, I use those as opportunities to take what I've learned and reach out to customers proactively. So don't rely solely on programs. Make sure that you're engaging organically where it makes sense. The more they see your name, the more they see you reaching out and engaging, the more likely they're going to reciprocate. Diversify engagement across all your customers and track it at a company level. don't just focus on the CSMs having these executive relationships. It's very hard. Most executives don't want to talk to their CSMs, maybe because they feel like the conversation will be tactical. Maybe they had a bad experience with the CSM in the past. It is often hard. Let's not lose sight of that. And so if you are a leader, do your part to help facilitate those relationships and those conversations. I will say intimate settings foster stronger engagement. Whether it's one-on-one or a small group to one, you are likely to have better dialogue, better relationship facilitation. So if you can get more intimate, do that. And then lastly, customers who participate in these programs, they have a higher likelihood of staying engaged. Once they've taken part in a program that's been so well executed, they are likely to have a higher response rate. They will show up for meetings and they won't cancel last minute. They'll reach out to you proactively to ask your advice on things. And that's the type of relationship that we want to establish. So if you're doing these types of things, you are likely to have a different level of engagement than you have today. So hopefully these are things that you can bring into your organization. Okay, we are at the Q&A part, so you all know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a sip of water. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to open up some of these questions, and we will see what we can get to today. Again, if you dropped anything in the chat and I wasn't able to see and or address it, I apologize. If you dropped it in the Q&A, I will get to it. I'm just going to have a sip of water. A lot of talking, guys. Okay. First question here. How do you consolidate the effective customer goals and how do you get them verified with customers' consent? That's a great question. So the way that our team does it is we actually have a couple very specific points in the customer journey where we are validating customer goals with them. We obviously coming into it, we're getting what the sales team captured as those customer goals. We're also then sending out a survey. We have a new customer survey. So every time a customer comes into the partnership, a survey is sent out to them. We capture it there as well. We validate in that partnership kickoff. We then refine as needed, but we capture all of that and enter it into ClientSuccess. ClientSuccess is a goals module that allows us to capture it there and allows us to track the progress. We can also take that goal information, enter it into our health scores as well. So it gives us a great way to say like, hey, is this customer on track to achieve their goals? Yes or no kind of thing as we're pacing. And obviously if not, guess what? The relationship's not that healthy because at the end of the day, if we're not helping them achieve their goals, there's no real value there. So we're having those conversations. We also have very prescriptive ways to help guide our customers in defining what those goals are. We have something called our 7 core business objectives, and we help really facilitate our customers through the goal defining process. And that's really helped. And so that's something I think we did a webinar on that, but happy to revisit. Okay, next one. What is a way to determine if the partner is a good fit if the executive is not a part of the purchase and discussion? Is there a point that the CSM team and sales should talk about if this is a good fit for both parties? So I'm just going to reread this again. So what is a way to determine if the partner is a good fit if the executive is not part of the purchase? Okay. So I mean, I guess if we're talking about customer fit, so if the executive has not been a part of this and things don't feel like they're a good fit, at the end of the day, I have to imagine somebody signed off on a contract, right? Somebody who had to have purchasing decision-making in the organization. That person should be able to articulate the value there and should be able to, I guess, guide the organization, both sales and CS, on why they purchased and what value they're hoping to get from the partnership. Obviously, there are exceptions to this where things do go sideways. Somebody signed off on something that they shouldn't, or you didn't have the right person involved in the partnership. Hopefully, those are exceptions and not the rule in your organization. In those cases, I often try to find the appropriate person in the business. If we don't have engagement with the right person, this is where LinkedIn is great, Discover.org is great. Like, just go figure out who the appropriate person might be and do some outreach there. What's the worst that happens? You get your hand slapped and somebody says, hey, please don't go around me. Yes, that happens. But if you don't have access to the right people, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're helping drive value. Sometimes those things are just necessary actions. How long are the leadership workshops was another question. Great question. So the initial one that we did was 2 hours. It was about 20 minutes up front of like setting expectations and walking everyone through what the workshop, how it will be conducted, what the expectations were, getting everyone up to speed on like the question matrix that we had paired. Like I said, it was kind of like a quadrant thing that they had to fill out. So we introduced all of that. Then what we did is we broke up into small groups. They had about an hour and change in those breakouts. And then we came back at the end for at least 30 minutes to do the presentations. Feedback that we got is that our customers actually wanted more time. So likely what we'll do is probably expand it to 2.5 or 3 hours, which is a huge commitment. But if everyone's getting value and is really engaged, we want to facilitate that. People wanted more time to workshop. They wanted more time in those breakouts to solution together. So we'll probably, like I said, expand that to 2.5 to 3 hours next time. I could probably get to one more. So, how much time shall executives spend for such leadership programs in order to keep balance and have results as well? That's a great question. It really depends. I would just try to, like, I wouldn't probably run all of these programs. It's hard to test the effectiveness of anything if you're doing so many things. So, I would say, try to get a sense from your customers what type of programs would be the most valuable to them, and then target those programs. Obviously, everything should have a business objective, our own business objective, in order to run these types of programs and make those investments. So make sure that you've got a very clear understanding of what that objective is and how to measure it. That way you can tell if it's effective or not. Obviously, the time commitment is going to vary from program to program. So just make sure that you're all very honest with yourselves on what's going to be required and establish some sense of ownership in the business. Okay, I know that we've got some more questions here. I wish I could get to all of them. I would definitely encourage you all, if you've got these questions, you want me to answer them, you can follow up with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer them there. We do have to drop though, because we are at time and I don't like to keep people longer than I promised. And so these are supposed to be an hour long. Obviously, wish I had more time with you all. I hope that you all found value in today's session. Like I said, we'll be back next Tuesday for the third installation in this series. If you had to drop, no problem. Go back, listen to the recording. If you can't make next weekend, which I hope that you can always catch the recording. But again, until then, have a great rest of your week and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.